but he's fully recovered.
Yes.
Oh, that's great, 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 great.
I do. Gotta hit you next week, or next time I see you, though.
Not tonight, thank you.
So we only have... So there's nothing... Wait, where's the regular agenda? Oh, we had the hearing first.
Public hearing first.
Okay,
So that is,
I need you, David.
okay. Okay,
turn it over to me. Patsy will come up and give a read.
okay. Great, great, great. Shall we start? Okay, let's go for it. I'd like to call this meeting to order. For our opening ceremony, we will have an invocation given by Chaplain Mike Kemple of Lighthouse on 11th. I ask that you stand for the invocation, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, City Commission, again for inviting me. I really appreciate the privilege to be able to open this meeting tonight. First one of the year. Thank you for all of you for your service. Again, the way I like to do this is we're a diverse city, a diverse cultural gathering of people. I can only pray in my own tradition, which is one of being a follower of Jesus. So I'll pray in that tradition, and then just please respect that, and I will respect your traditions as well. Almighty God, our Father, this is an exciting night to be here. Work will be done. I pray blessing and wisdom and great courage for this city commission to do the work that you've called them to do. I thank you for the sacrifices that these men and women make. I pray for our local commission. I pray for all those in social services, in education, in commerce, in law enforcement, and those who would do your will, Lord. We have a lot to be proud of. Our city's been on a national stage, and we thank you for those who represented our city very well from Western Michigan University. Thank you for the character and the class that they exhibited while in Texas. Lord, we give you praise for tonight. Pray blessing on families that are hurting. Pray hope for those who may be struggling. And Lord, we ask that you would bless this meeting and bless all who have attended and will watch and listen. We pray this in the name of Jesus, your Son. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Clerk Boiling, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Knott.
Here.
Commissioner Milzarek.
Present.
Commissioner Sykes.
Here.
Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Hopewell.
Could we have a vote to excuse the mayor?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Sykes and seconded by Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Milarczyk, thank you. And can we please have all in favor, please say their name. Please say aye, all in favor.
Aye.
Thank you. The mayor is excused. Commissioners, you have in front of you the proposed agenda for this evening's meeting. Are there any changes? No. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to items on the consent agenda, these are the items in section F. Please indicate these items at this time so they can be moved to the regular agenda. Is there anyone who wants to move something from the consent agenda to the regular agenda? Seeing none, City Manager Rietzema, are there any communications?
Your Honor, I would like to point out, it's in the listing of meetings, upcoming meetings. January 23rd, we're going to have a special work session where we'll talk about the Foundation for Excellence and the proposed process for determining how we're going to invest the $10 million from that foundation for 2017. So I look forward to that work session on the 23rd.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item E1. I would now like to open a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2017 budget for the city of Kalamazoo. City Manager Reesma, is there a presentation?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Deputy City Manager Patsy Moore to come forward just to give a brief presentation on the proposed 2017 budget.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Vice Mayor Cooney and City Commissioners, we are pleased to present the 2017 proposed budget for public comment this evening. The proposed budget for all funds total approximately $148 million, and that budget will support 601 full-time positions with 10 part-time positions. As you recall, we were successful during negotiations with the AFSCME bargaining unit to eliminate that two-tier wage system. We will be pursuing that strategy as we communicated to you during that time, and we will eliminate that two-tier wage system for NBU employees beginning in 2017. The budget also supports capital investment of over $20 million. Approximately $15 million of that will be supported from the enterprise funds. The proposed budget also includes a general fund budget of almost $58 million with a projected fund balance 13.8%. And finally, we are extremely excited to present a proposed budget that reduces the general operating millage rate from 19.2705 to 12 mills. So the proposed budget is available online, and hard copies are available in offices here in City Hall. Again, we will be asking for your final approval on January 17th, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, are there any questions? Thank you. If there are any citizens who wish to comment on the proposed budget, please come to the podium, state your name, whether you live in the city, and you will have 4 minutes for your comments. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Mr. Manager, the adoption of the 2017 budget is scheduled for the business meeting on Tuesday, January 17th. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. City Manager?
Yes, we have 4 items this evening. First is the approval of a 1-year term contract with Linden Oil for the purchase of various types of lubricants for an amount not to exceed $154,549.57. Next is the approval of the purchase of a Volvo PF 4410 paver from Alta Equipment for a total cost of $332,027. Next is the first reading of an ordinance to first rezone 45 parcels from zones M1, M2, and zone CCBD, commonly referred to as the Commercial Central Business District, to zone CMU, Commercial Mixed Use District. And second, adds the new sub-area 9 of the Riverfront Overlay District. And third, amend the Riverfront Overlay District to add sub-area 9 and apply it to the parcels, and to schedule a public hearing for January 17, 2017. And finally, approval of amended bylaws for the Community Development Act Advisory Committee.
Thank you, City Manager. Commissioners, the requested action is to approve items 1 to 4 on the consent agenda and authorize the City Manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion? Okay. Commissioner Knotts moved and Commissioner Urban seconded. Clerk Blorling, could we please have call to roll?
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Milzarek.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. The proposals pass. Next are reports and legislation. City Manager Reesma, do you have a report?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next is the opportunity for citizen comments. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any topic should come forward to the podium. Please give your name and whether you live in the city, and you will have 4 minutes to make your comments. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My legal name is Isha Kazad, And I'm in the process of legally changing it to Nehemiah Scudder so that most of my friends now call me Nehemiah. I wanted to speak tonight concerning a group I belong to, which is new in society, or at least new in public appearance. That is the group of what you might call ex-mental patients. One thing about mental illness is that it's strongly coordinated with creativity. Most people in the past have regarded mental illness as a very negative quality, whereas creativity is regarded as a somewhat positive quality. But the two seem to somewhat go together. Because of the new medicines put forth by many companies now, it's possible for ex-mental patients like myself to be stable up to a point at least if they faithfully take their medicines, which I do. And this has led to a group of people which we call peer support, helping each other in various places around the community. One place I might mention is Recovery Institute over on South Westnedge at 1020 South Westnedge. We have others. There's, I forget the name now, but there's a group on Stockbridge. There's a group on Vine Street called Pathways. And there may be others of which I'm not aware of. These people are trying to help ex-mental patients learn to faithfully take their drugs if necessary. And with this help, many mental patients are becoming more stable and able to contribute positively in greater part to the community, both in terms of creativity and just plain work. Well, this is a new phenomenon in history. In the past, these medicines or drugs or whatever you want to call them were not available. The first one to come in was Thorazine back around 1962. Soon after Thorazine came in, we had many others. There was Malaril, there was Telazine, Navane, and nowadays there's maybe several dozen or even 100 different mental illness drugs which help people like me to be relatively stable if properly taken. This is a new phenomenon in history. These drugs did not exist in the past. Prior to 1962, there were no mental illness drugs. And we had various very severe forms of treatment, such as shock treatment, immersion in very cold water for long periods of time, and similar relatively drastic solutions that didn't work very well. Because the child drugs do work, we're experiencing a growth of this ex-mental patient community, helping each other partially and working sometimes at cross purposes. And I'm proud to be a member of that community, and I do try to faithfully take my drugs. And I close with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other citizens who wish to make comments? You can come right up and then sign in later, sir. You can come right in and then sign in later.
Okay. My name's Jamie Kavanaugh. Most of you probably know me or know who I am anyway. I'm here tonight to express my frustration, bordering on anger, with the street project that's taking place on West Vine Street between Oak and Davis Street. I was not given any notice of this project prior to decisions being made and plans being drawn. I'm a property owner there of almost 25 years. I own 3 properties in Vine Street. I'm heavily invested in Kalamazoo and in the Vine neighborhood. What's going on there is they're widening the street. And as part of that project, they're going to put in these bump outs. And bump outs are one of the biggest things, other than the lack of an opportunity to have a public meeting and discuss this, that I have, because I see what happens on East Vine down by Bronson Hospital. People park out into the street on a regular basis. It's not possible at all to plow the snow out of going into and out of those bump outs, unless our city plow trucks were to drive up over the curbs. I've spoken with plow truck drivers. They agree with me. They agree that it's difficult. I drive a snowplow truck myself, not a big one like that, but I plow my own snow. So I understand a little bit about that. Allowing parking on Vine Street, you know, I've been there for almost 25 years. For 17 of those 24 plus years, I struggled with the city and the aggressive enforcement that auto park / parking properties / neighborhood parking services did over in that area. They used to do laps around the block on Friday night. Parking is allowed after 6 on the north side of Vine. They would ticket up until 2 or 3 minutes before 6. Imagine if that was your business, and your customers are being aggressively targeted as a profit center for the parking properties group. For a long time, I paid the tickets, and then Auto Park, or whatever we want to call them, lost the contract, with the exception of downtown, the central business district. That solved my problem. By allowing parking on both sides of the street, we slow traffic, which is the supposed goal of doing these bump outs, other than they think it'll make it a little bit more safe for the kids that walk to El Sol. Fine, do that at Oak Street. Don't mess with the parking, the very limited parking that I have for my business. Makes no sense. To spend hundreds of thousands, maybe $1 million, I don't know. Why are we doing it? Because we have grant money. We need to spend it or we'll lose it. I can't really express my frustration enough. I was not invited to anything up until October, where I went to an informational meeting, and it was made quite clear there was no opportunity for any major changes in this plan. This is absurd, and it shows me literally what the city of Kalamazoo thinks of my business and the impact it has had on the Vine neighborhood. I'd love to be able to take a step back to 1992 when I bought that building, and the house across from me, which is a 6-unit, 4 of them were drive-up drug dealers. No one wanted to go to the Vine neighborhood. People from Portage were scared to come up over Westnedge Hill. I believe that as far as that neighborhood, and especially the northwest quadrant, we've had a significant impact. But this, to me, really tells me what the city thinks of me and all the work I've done over the last almost quarter century. I own a house in Vine neighborhood, which I rehabbed from being vacant for 10 years. I just bought another building that I use as my office, all in the Vine neighborhood. I love the neighborhood, I love the city, but I'm extremely frustrated. And I just wanted to let you know. I have brought some pictures of what the street looks
You could show them to Kirk. Okay, thank you, sir. Does anyone else want to make a comment to the city? Please.
Anthony Roth, I live at 520 Elm Street here in Kalamazoo. I'm commenting on the same thing that Jamie Kavanaugh just did. And I was told to come here and give you hell by someone in the know. I don't want to do that. I think you do a great job in general. I very much respect the job that this commission does in general. I voted this commission in, not individually, obviously, but I support what you do. The problem that I have with the thing that just happened on Vine Street, which I guess happened today, and obviously has been in the works for a long time, is a question about how would anyone know this was happening? I don't know about, Public Works. I don't know about planning and development. I don't know who runs those departments. I can look that up. But I guess the first question I have, which is sort of addressed to anyone here that can answer the question, is who do they work for? The people that are in charge of those departments who apparently have to spend this grant money or lose it, as I understand it, all of which I've learned today. So if some of that's wrong, let me know. But who is in charge of those departments?
So we don't answer questions right now, but somebody will get back to you afterwards.
Okay,
on it.
all right, very good. So if I understand correctly, ultimately, this commission would make the rules that would apply to such a project that Jamie Kavanaugh was just talking about. I guess no one's going to answer that question since we can't answer questions right now. But I guess what I would ask is that this commission do everything it can to keep such a thing from happening, because, I live on Elm Street. I know where some of you live. I know some of you would very much oppose this kind of thing happening in your neighborhood. If this happened, say, between North and Kalamazoo on Stewart, how many people you think would be here right now? If they didn't have any idea that you were going to cut down, say, all of the trees on the west side of Stewart Avenue between Kalamazoo and North. You talk about getting some help. You would get some, and you would keep getting it, and a bunch of you wouldn't be here anymore in these seats. And I appreciate what you do. Like I said, I want you to be in these seats, but I also want you to do everything that you can to keep this kind of thing from happening. I know what Vine Street looked like. I go to Jamie's business regularly. I appreciate it very much. I walked by there today with my dog. I have to appreciate it less now. It's uglier now. It's going to be uglier still when this project is done. And I don't know anyone who knew that this project was going to happen. And if a project like this gets put in place for, say, Stewart Avenue between Kalamazoo and North Street, are those folks going to know? Are they going to know ahead of time that this is going to happen to their neighborhood? Are they going to know ahead of time that their property values are going to go down? And if they don't, why don't they know? I would think that it is your job to get that information out. It is your job to make sure that the rules are set up so that there is public comment, so people like Jamie Kavanaugh, who is all the things he just said he is, and has been for all of that time that he said he has been, very important to this town. He can go anywhere he wants. But we got to have places like that, and we got to have people who care about the place, and we...
Thank you, sir. Anyone else have a comment?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Mr. Vice Mayor, how's everyone doing so far this evening? The agenda seemed awfully light this
Would you
evening.
please give us your
Oh, I'm
name
sorry.
and if you leave us-
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that,
That's
Mr. Cooney. My name is Greg Taylor. My address is 2725 Airview Boulevard here in the city. And the agenda seemed light enough tonight that I thought it would be an appropriate time for me to come forward and actually thank all of you and the city at large for supporting the Exchange Project, which City Manager Ritzma was kind enough to go to Lansing 2 weeks ago and help us celebrate approval of a large incentive package, which we've been working on with the city for years. So I just wanted to thank all of you that have supported this project for a while, a number of years, and wanted to thank the city manager for taking the time to joining us in Lansing. We still have a lot of work to do, and I'm sure some problems to overcome together, but I wanted to take this opportunity to again just thank you for your persistent support of this project. It means a lot to me. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment? Okay. At this time, we will hear from any commissioners who want to make comments. Commissioner Mozart.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to speak a few moments on the street project on Vine that some residents have brought up tonight. As a Vine resident, I've certainly heard a lot today, and I actually was quite shocked that the project was moving forward at this time. I know we had some residents come a few months back to speak on it, and we were given an update that it indicated it would be put out to bid in the spring and work would start in the summer. So and that also had indicated that there was potentially more engagement and design work to happen between now and then. So I was certainly under the impression that there was more time for engagement with citizens. What's been, I guess, the most frustrating thing about my day is in looking at our update sort of on the engagement we've had throughout this project is it was clearly not, it did not correlate with what residents were telling me happened at the meetings. There were references to the amount of people who raised concerns and also people named that were in support of this who indicated that they were not. So that's a real major concern of mine, that we on the commission would get a report that is contradictory to what residents are telling me, and I'm going to believe what the residents tell me over what a city staff report says. And it really brings to question if this is a more common thing than just this one time. I don't think it is. I certainly hope it is not, but it's definitely very, very frustrating for me to assume that residents are supporting something based on a report from the city, and then those literally exact same residents are going, that is not at all what happened at the meeting or with conversations I've had. So it's very frustrating, and I understand why some residents are frustrated. You know, on the obviously we can't put trees back that are gone. On the notion of bump outs, you know, I had concerns, and that was something I thought I could bring up at future engagement sessions on this, because down Vine Street we had a pop-up bike lane this past summer, which one of my major feedbacks in that pop-up bike lane was the bikeability in connection with the curb jut outs that happen is extremely difficult, and actually makes a bike lane like that essentially impossible. So that doesn't mean you don't necessarily do it, it just means it's a consideration we need to have, and I would certainly want business owners and residents and everyone who actually is going to be impacted by this the most to have the most say. I actually happen to be the person who drafted the Safe Routes to School plan, which is what's referenced as the starting point of this all. I was the Vine Neighborhood Association Development Director at the time, and that plan absolutely talked about crosswalks and routes to school. It actually was much more aligned with the project we did earlier this summer with the crosswalk and signal on Howard Street that got put in for Maple Street. And that was the type of thing that we always envisioned this complete, or the Safe Routes to School plan doing, sort of minor crosswalk things. It never addressed street widening or anything sort of to this level. So I just hope everyone knows that was really not an engagement session with the community back in 2012, 2013 about widening a street, putting in these the jut outs and tree removal and all that. So, you know, very frustrating. I certainly don't want to imply that there was ill intent anywhere, but this is something that we need to sort of wrap our head around as we do better in the future. Obviously, our goal is to do better. You know, as some residents said tonight, you know, we don't want to have this happen again in the future. So that's certainly my goal is, what can we do between now and this summer to make sure we have the most possible engagement with our residents as we can. I know last year we had a similar situation with the roundabout project on the River's Edge area. A lot of concerns from the residents. We sort of put a pause on it and went back to the drawing table to make sure everyone was in the know. I don't know if this thing needs a year pause, but certainly we need to make sure that we have, we do a better job between now and the start of this project to make sure we have, you know, input from those who are going to be impacted by this on a daily basis. Other than that, I just wanted to comment on the new year. We have an exciting new year coming up. I mean, probably the greatest change year in Kalamazoo in recent history. We got a lot of work ahead of us, so I look forward to working with you all. Thank you. Thank you for everyone who came out tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rohrabaugh.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cooney. Almost said Hopewell. Well, I'm quite disturbed by what I'm hearing this evening regarding this street work on West Vine, because now we have, looks like a pattern of 3 street modification incidents in which the public was felt left out or was ignored to some degree. And in two cases, at least, I can kind of see what the greater community benefit was from the changes. I'm thinking of Parkview and Oakland Drive. The widening there went on just shortly after I became a city commissioner. Then the roundabout, which is in the process of being redesigned and been delayed a year for a number of reasons. So we have a chance there. And now this one. I know that the city planning and development department is dedicated to being open and transparent with the public. But in this case, maybe the engineering department is involved as well. In any case, we can't keep having things like this happen and expect people to trust us with development of the city and the kinds of things we know we need to have happen to make it walkable and bikeable and pedestrian friendly, to increase the sociability of downtown and the economic activity of downtown. I'm very concerned about that. I'm sure I'll get an explanation, but it's not just me that needs to hear the explanation. The public needs to hear it, and they have to hear it in a way that they understand. In many cases, there's a conflict or a potential conflict between what is the best thing for a particular property owner or a particular neighborhood and what's the overall benefit for the entire community. And if the people who are affected negatively can't see a convincing positive benefit for the whole community, they're going to be justifiably upset. So I'm waiting to hear what the overall positive benefit is from this project on West Vine Street. I've failed to see it. Maybe I haven't paid enough attention, but I expect to learn more, and I expect things to be different from here on. As to what's going to happen next year with respect to the decrease in the property taxes for the city property owners, that really is the first step, the first action that really puts in train a huge change for the city of Kalamazoo. The train is pulling out of the station, and a lot of what's going to happen is going to be depending on making up that money that we decided to not receive from the taxpayers, but instead receive from some very generous donors. We need to go into that with our eyes open, and we need to be sure that we can have trust in one another as we go forward. And I'm really counting on having the kinds of meetings and productive exchanges that will lead that trust to form and strengthen. And I hope the public will sense that trust growing and ripening as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Knott.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. So Commissioner Urban hit on a number of points, so I won't repeat them as it relates to the Vine Street project, but I do wonder if we had in place already a complete streets policy with some teeth, if this project would have moved forward. And I won't put the city manager on the spot tonight, but I do anticipate answers to some questions that we all have related to this project. And I will just say right now that, Mr. Kavanaugh, Mr. Roth, I appreciate you coming out. You represent about a dozen or so folks that reached out to me today. And Jamie, to you personally, I met you in 1996 when you hired me to be the crime prevention officer at the Vine Neighborhood Association. And I recall that house on the corner of Vine and Locust Place, and I know what a problem property that was. And you have been a catalyst of change in that portion of the neighborhood. So I appreciate you coming out. I will be a conduit of information to you as I receive it. I look forward to sitting down with you and hearing your frustrations on a more one-on-one basis, because there's not much I can do up here right now. Pivoting from that, something also related to Vine, and maybe Director Baker can answer tonight. 2 weeks ago, we heard, when the weather broke, that we were going to work on cleaning streets from leaves. And I've heard from some folks in West Nitch Hill, as well as the Vine neighborhood, that that's happening, and just wondering, kind of in a nutshell, where we are with street removal, because we've had a couple of weeks of no snow.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Director Baker, you want to come forward?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cooney, City Manager and Commission. I don't know if you want me to address just on the leaf issue now, or if you wanted me to provide some responses to some of our projects and some of the other issues. I'm prepared to do both. Whatever the commission would choose. To give an update on the leaves, I'd say we're probably a quarter of the way through the sections that we missed. We've been out working both on the night shift as well as during the daytime to try to get into those neighborhoods and get everything cleaned up. Again, we have stated and we have made accommodations to do a spring pickup. So we'll be back out in the spring once all the snow is gone to make sure that we've got all those leaves. So certainly we are committed to the community to make sure that we perform that task. To go into some of the projects, certainly we're hearing a lot of comment tonight, certainly some frustrations. We acknowledge that, it's our goal to enhance neighborhoods. It's our goal to improve neighborhoods. We would never set out to do a project to blight a neighborhood or disparage a neighborhood. That being said, the Vine project, like many of our projects that are funded through federal highway safety dollars and through CATS, a lot of these projects have been in the pipeline for 5 or more years. I believe this Vine Street project has been in the pipeline since 5 years or more. Some of the issues with the widening really are kind of our focus to address all the street uses. Vine Street is a major street. It handles a lot of traffic. We also handle a lot of bus and school traffic. So we take a look at all those traffic counts and we throw that into our design software. We see where the movement restrictions are and we see where the improvements are needed. We take those improvements into consideration while also taking parking and curb lawn aesthetics into consideration. So the widening is a 7-foot widening on the north, and that's being done to accommodate current and future traffic flows as well as bike traffic. The tree removals that are happening, those tree removals will be replaced one for one with new trees. We're working with each property owner and we will replace that tree with a tree of a chosen species by the property owner. So that's some of the changes that we're making to make sure that we can accommodate the property owners. To answer the question why the crews are doing it now, we're getting the tree removals done using in-city forces, using city labor, city crews. We can do that ahead of the project to make sure that we're saving dollars on the project, and then we can ensure that we're not delaying the project with work that is routinely outside the scope of most street projects. Looking into the future, we've certainly been working a lot with our partners in community planning and development. We're working with the neighborhoods and we plan to really try and incorporate a lot of the needs of the community into the projects. Not having projects span out over such a long planning period from the planning to delivery will certainly help to understand what the needs are of that community. And all of our projects, we're taking a look at all street uses, not just traffic, but we're also looking at walkability, bikeability, and everything else like that. With the bump outs at the crosswalks, we're narrowing the width that one has to cross. So we're making that distance or that travel time for the walker reduced. And certainly there's maintenance issues with everything we do. And it's our job really is to overcome those maintenance issues to make sure we're delivering the safest roadways possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. I would just ask if you could meet with the gentlemen tonight before they leave to answer some of their questions, see if there's some other way we could work more closely with them.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sykes.
Yeah, so one of the things I love about sitting on this commission is how well we can follow right after one another. Just to start, I concur with the comments that came before me. In response to the concerns, and also the little bit of information that we just received, I wonder if it makes sense to have a public presentation, maybe at our next meeting, in regard to this project. Couple of things that I would really like to know is how were we notifying residents? Director, I heard you mention, working with property owners, working with the neighborhood, but it definitely sounds like we have some property owners who feel as if they were not notified and are not familiar with this project. And that's troubling, given that the project's been in the works for 5 or more years. So I'd be really interested in knowing what that notification process looked like, how we're reaching out, and just some other details, what the timeline looks like to sort of follow up on what Commissioner Mills-Arick said. What does our timeline look like? At what points are we doing which steps? And maybe that highlights for us some of the places that we can insert a little bit more communication that hasn't already occurred. So a presentation on all of that so that we're all aware and so that the public is aware, I think would be really helpful. So thank you for that, City Manager Ritzma. I also wanted to thank the gentleman for his comments on mental illness. Just coming off of a holiday, I got to see my aunt for the first time in a very long time who suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. And I have seen her joys and her struggles. And I know that she grew up during a time where she experienced some really horrific, outdated treatment in response to her mental illness. And so, any progress that we've made now and advancements in understanding as well as treatment are incredibly important. So thank you for bringing that to our mind. And Happy New Year. I hope everybody is feeling as energized and rejuvenated as I am coming off of this break.
Oh, good.
And I am ready to hit the ground running, and I look forward to a great 2017.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I won't make any more comments about the primary issue tonight, other than to say, Mr. Kavanaugh's contributions to the Vine neighborhood are really beyond measure, and certainly I think it's unfortunate that you, sir, feel like you have to come here, to get some input on this whole situation. You have, the role you have played in the Vine neighborhood for many, many years is the kind of thing that has kept Kalamazoo with some sense of place and vibrant and alive during all that time. So I wholly recognize that, and everyone's really talked about the topic and what we might possibly do related to that. So I want to change the discussion here just a little bit. I wanted to go back just for a minute, a couple things that just go through our consent agenda. Sometimes those things happen and nobody really notes them. We just pass it and move on. And one of the items tonight, for example, was a contract for petroleum products, not anything particularly exciting, but a contract for approximately $155,000. And one thing I want to remind people is that the details related to those contracts are always in our bid packet for anybody to look at. Just so happens that the entity tonight that was the low bidder was out of Lansing, and questions sometimes come up about local preference, and there was a bidder out of the 10 or so folks that did bid on this particular item. The second lowest bidder was a bidder from the city of Kalamazoo. That's something I look at right away because that's something that is an interest to me, and I'm sure everyone who lives in Kalamazoo. We do have a local preference purchasing policy, which happens to be a 2% preference, I believe. And so in this particular case, that next lowest bidder, which was the Kalamazoo bidder, was over 9% over on the price than the lowest bidder. Obviously then did not fit into our preference policy. So it's just something I like to remind ourselves of, that we do have a preference policy, but you have to be pretty darn close to the price, to get that preference. So that went through our consent agenda. If we were going to have a more rigorous policy, that could, at the end of the day, affect another decision we have to make, which in this case would mean we'd spend $13,000 more than we would otherwise. So that's just an item to note. And then more in general, I think we said just a very, very moving meeting here a couple meetings ago when the swearing in occurred for a new group of public safety officers. And at that time, we talked about that and all the great work that public safety does to successfully recruit quality people here for our department. But related to all that, one comment was made that there's going to be much more recruitment that we're going to have to be doing here over the next few years. And there was an article today in a Michigan paper, Detroit News, talking about that, and they quoted a person by the name of David Harvey, who's the executive director of the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. And his quote was, quote, "I think we're at a crisis situation with the staffing at our agencies right now." And one of the things that is included in our budget is a very, very modest increase, less than one person per shift request for public safety, which has been running at beyond capacity for really the whole year now, if not longer. And it's a couple interesting figures came out in this article. One is that literally across the state, since pretty much the beginning of 2000, there's been an 18% decrease just due to reduced funding in the total number of police and public safety officers that are present in communities and at the state level. And that certainly is something that affects a whole variety of things. It is locals that provide that kind of service, and we have had to give up on specific things like community policing units and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to stay viable here and provide that great service in the quality way that we intend for it to be provided. This gentleman, David Harvey, also goes on to say that there's a big struggle to lure new recruits to the work. And it is not a job that starts off as a high-paying job. It's a job that entails a lot of risk every day and a lot of stress every day. And that said, I want to congratulate our Public Safety Department here for our successful recruiting. There's a lot of communities listed in this article who are not being successful in recruiting people to work for them, are still running with less than desirable levels of public safety and not finding folks that are willing to step up and undertake that hard work to replace them. So that is something I think we're going to be facing ourselves here if we haven't already, and that I'm hoping that we will keep being able to do our good work to attract good, quality, committed people here to do this work here in the city of Kalamazoo.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I would like to echo Commissioner Sykes' recommendation. I hope we can have a public hearing. I think that would be great, and I hope people will come back for that and give us your views on it. I'd like to say a couple words about the Western Michigan University Broncos football team. Everybody hear of them? Oh, yes, I'm sure you have. Well, you know, I just want to say that what a wonderful thing it has been to see this team. When you think that the first year, 4 years ago, they were 1 win and 11 losses, and the 1 win was tainted. But they won 1 game anyhow that year. But a lot of those same fellas are still here 4 years later, and what a tremendous difference it has made. You know, sports are more than just a game. I think they teach a lot of lessons about life. I think one of the lessons that this team teaches is dedication. I've had some of these fellas in class, and I know how hard they work. They are constantly working all year round, and it's very hard for them to go to classes, to go out there and work 3 hours a day on their sport. So one thing it teaches is dedication and a commitment to excellence, and they really had that commitment to excellence. And another thing is a responsibility to each other, because this team really cared about each other and saw what they did as a responsibility to do the absolute best they could for the whole team. So I think those things are really tremendous. I know it was tough for them to lose yesterday. after having won 13 straight games this year. But I came to my mind one of the great sports writers named Grantland Rice wrote one time. And he said, when the one great scorer comes to write against your name, he'll count not if you won or lost, but how you played the game. They played the game very well. Thank you, Broncos. With that, we are adjourned.